Well, not quite as foggy out there this morning as the last couple days. Going to be nice sunshine, 73 again today for a high. It's 11 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. Welcome into the morning drill. Joining us this morning from the high school. I'm used to you at the middle school or the junior high level back in the day.
I know. I've been at the high school 4 years now.
Wow. Sara Jones joining us this morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Before we get to the real meat of the conversation, let's learn a little bit about yourself. Where are you from and how did you come to Titusville?
I'm from Elk County, a little town called Johnsonburg, and did my undergraduate degree at Shippensburg University near Harrisburg. And got here because saw there was a job opening when I graduated, and just like today, it wasn't easy for teachers always to find a job in the early 90s when I graduated. So came here to the junior high when we were still a junior high, moved to the middle school, and I've been here for 20 years.
Wow.
I know, it goes fast.
It does. I'm trying to think. Your first year here was my first year in the junior high?
Could have been. My first year was the year before we moved to the middle school. So, that mid-year transition that we went from junior high to middle school would have been the second year that I was in the district. 94, I came to the district.
Was Sara your teacher at one time?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Actually, it was Miss Bliss.
Yeah, way back when.
Back when, yeah. Wow. That's hard to believe.
I know it.
You were with the class of John Herman and...
John Herman came in 1 year before I did, but right all together. And then after I came in, we had a large group of new teachers come in. Most still around. Mr. Reynolds, Mrs. Coley, all came in that group then. Around the same time.
When you came to Titusville, did you think, okay, this is a great opportunity to start my career, and then maybe I'll get back towards home, or?
Kind of. I think you always think about heading back towards where you started, but I really love it here. So. It's been a great career here.
I think we could safely say that Sara's a native.
No, it's hard to be a native here.
Even for the natives, it's hard to be native.
How about a semi-native?
Maybe I could be considered that.
Well, I think it was Dr. Joe Carrico, the superintendent in Oil City, who said you had to be in a community for about 20 years before you're close to being considered.
And then you have to apply for the position of being a native.
Right.
And then you have to pass muster with everybody.
Right. You have to know all the connections.
I know how this works. I know exactly how this works because I lived in Denver for 22 years before returning home to my hometown of Warren/Russell, PA. And I was considered a newbie. I mean, I grew up there, Fox Hill and Akeley, and people called me the new kid or the new, not kid because, not a kid.
So
but anyway, we digress.
Yeah. So as you come to Titusville and begin teaching, I mean, what you teach social studies.
I do.
Did you always know that's what you wanted to teach, or at what point in your life did you think this is great? I'd love to be in social studies.
When I was in high school, I had some great social studies teachers, history teachers that really made me realize that you could do this as a career and it could be a lot of fun and it wasn't dry old facts. And so that really inspired me as I went on to college to choose social studies as the field that I wanted to teach.
Did you, as you were studying, did you get a chance to travel much, or was it pretty much all at the university level?
At that time, it was mostly at the university level. Today, they really encourage kids to do semesters abroad and do travel. But when I went to school, which was a long time ago now, it was mostly classroom instruction, and you didn't get out into the classroom until you student taught.
Wow.
So, and hoped you liked it by then.
I studied abroad and ended up marrying her, and so that's
a whole nother topic. That's
a win-win. Yeah.
Amy, we hope you're not listening.
Now that kind of brings up a great opportunity that you had. Now, are you department chair?
I am not the department chair at this point now.
But you were looking at developing curriculum with the social studies department. Something you were teaching?
It was something that I was teaching, and through this Fulbright experience that I just had this summer, it's one of the requirements of Fulbright to do a curricular piece that fits into your curriculum and addresses the travel that we've done and the experiences that we've had. So my curriculum is on the Israeli and Palestinian conflict.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that meant a trip for you.
Yes, it did.
So talk about your trip. Where did you go?
The trip was a Fulbright sponsored trip, which is a great opportunity for teachers, and they have trips for students as well. It's a government program that was started in the Truman administration after World War II, not as a political program, but so that people understood what it was like around the world as people were fearful after the war about other cultures. And so you apply to go. I went through the Global Studies Center at Pitt, and we traveled to Jordan. And while we were there, we traveled the country, but then we also visited Israel and the West Bank of Palestine.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Were you nervous at all heading over there? I mean, obviously there's a lot going on in that part of the world.
I got asked that question a lot, but the honest answer is no. The original grant for the trip had been to Egypt. And it had started actually a couple years earlier when they wrote an original grant. And each time Egypt had its own issues with the Arab Spring movements, and the government said, no, you can't go there. So you kind of know, because this is a government program, that if something is going to happen, then the government puts a quash on the trip and doesn't put anybody in jeopardy. So as far as the Middle East goes, until this very newest announcement by Jordan that they're joining the coalition with America, it's a safe region in the Middle East. And so you don't see the violence on their borders as you do in some of the other countries.
How long were you there, Sarah?
I was there a month.
Okay. And do you think the news as it travels to America is accurate by the time we get it?
It's certainly a Western perspective of what's happening. So the facts are pretty accurate, but the perspective sometimes is much different than what you hear when you're in the Middle East and you have mostly Arab communities that are bringing you the news there. So it's a lot different to see what their perspective is compared to ours.
Was it striking to you how small the country is?
It was, but we were in Amman, which is their largest city and has almost half of their population. And so it was a real big city feel. But interestingly, Jordan's only been a country since the late 40s. And so it's been populated for a very long time, but part of the country is very old style where they adapted some of the villages. And part of it's very cosmopolitan, very Western. The buildings are mostly Middle Eastern in appearance, but the amenities are Western hotels and malls and in part of the city, and then you have the old section of the city, which is the narrow streets that you see a lot of times when you go to Europe and places like that, where you have the cobblestone streets and they're narrow and the buildings are all packed together, and the shops are at the bottom and people live above that, and so you see that feel in the city as well.
Was a month a long enough time for you? Did you want to stay longer? Were you ready to come home?
I think both. It was not nearly a long enough time to learn everything that we wanted to learn or were trying to learn. But at the end of the month, I think everybody was ready to see their families and get back to what you're familiar with. And, it was every day. Although people were great about language and speaking English, our Arabic was mighty poor. And we had Arabic lessons, but it's a tough language. And so we tried. The people were polite. The cab drivers chuckled at us and then spoke English. But every day you're trying to figure out in another language what's going on. So a month of that is long.
Wow.
Did you have falafels?
We had a lot of falafel. Yes, falafel sandwich, all different varieties. Yes, yeah.
We're here with social studies teacher Sara Jones. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. 21 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. How did that experience rank among maybe some other experiences you've had in your career?
Oh, I would say that this was the best travel experience that I've had for a couple reasons. One, it was incredibly organized and organized by somebody else. So
that's nice.
It was. They had all the connections. When you take a trip on your own, you hope you're seeing everything. You pick the spots that are highlights, but you don't always know, did I miss something that the locals would have recommended? Where here, the entire program was planned out from day 1 to day 30. And so we knew that we were getting the best topics, the best professors. We were seeing the sites that we should be seeing for what we were trying to accomplish.
Was there any room, if maybe you guys came across something that wasn't on that list, but you could veer off just a little bit to take in?
There were a couple days for that. So I mean, we hit the ground running. We flew out of Pittsburgh through Paris to Amman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a long flight, a lot of time difference. So we arrived in Amman, their time a little after 10, got to our guest house. They had dinner waiting for us. But the very next morning, we were at the university doing IDs and meeting with the staff that was going to be working with us and taking care of all those things. And it was 2.5 weeks in before we had a free day that was scheduled on the schedule for us to do things that we liked.
Did you find what you were teaching in the classroom, and I realize I think you were gathering information to create curriculum based upon...
I was, but I didn't go with a specific lesson plan in mind. I went to kind of see in the first few weeks what came to mind in terms of what I do in my own classroom. Because Jordan is not a country necessarily that's covered by a lot of curriculums. It's a very stable country. It helps a lot of other Middle Eastern countries, takes in a lot of refugees, Palestinian, Syrian, Iraqi refugees. But you don't see it in our history books very much, other than in the creation of when it separated the territory of that area after World War II. So, it was a learning curve to exactly what's here and how can we accomplish that. And then once we traveled to the West Bank, it kind of all fell in place that this really should be what I cover. And we had been there over a weekend, and when we came back, they found the 3 Israeli boys, and that started the newest of the warring between the Israelis and the Palestinians at that point. So we were right there, back in Jordan, thankfully, but right there as that was becoming part of the news, both in that part of the world and here in the West. So that just was a natural fit then for my classroom.
Did you find that was the big discussion over there? Were they talking about that quite a bit, or does it seem like we discuss it more over here?
Honestly, although certainly it was in the news when it first happened, but all of the warring, they're bordered by Syria, they're bordered by Iraq, and that's not what you hear day to day on the streets. You hear it on the news and you hear that, but because they're not in that war zone directly, their concern is the refugees. They're a country of a little over 7 million, 40% of their population are refugees. Wow. So, how does that strain their economy, their territory? It only rains a few months a year there, so we're getting to the end of the season before it rains, water's getting scarce. Those are the things people are talking about. The gas prices going up because they get most of their oil from Iraq, and now with issues happening there, is that going to drive gas prices up? That's what they're talking about on the street.
I would imagine a whole month just gathering all this information. Where do you start? How do you lay out the plan?
That's a good question. A lot of it was getting the central idea. And then once you do that, then going back into the notes we took and the people we talked to and the experiences, the pictures that everybody took. And we created a nice Google site that everybody's been sharing their pictures.
You did ride a camel.
I did ride a camel, yes.
You almost have to.
You do almost have to.
Well, with gas prices, Kate,
I know.
However, I would say this was my one and only camel riding experience.
Okay.
So
you're done with that.
I'm done. It was interesting, but it's not like riding a horse. Camels are much taller than horses. They're
you're really up there when they stand up.
Yes.
Wow.
And most camel riding experiences are at organized places where that's what you do. They have a ladder. You climb the ladder, you get on the camel, you go around a little track like at a zoo, or you wave, get pictures. That wasn't our experience. We were spending the night with the Bedouins in a Bedouin community.
Oh my word.
Yeah, so camel riding was a 40-minute ride into the desert to meet the jeeps, to go to the sand dunes, and then eventually to the campsite. So the camels were, laying down. You had to get on. They stood up while you were on. That's not an easy balancing feat. And then their legs are very long and skinny. So they kind of,
Wobble.
lop along.
Yeah.
So, and they're wider than horses. And so very interesting experience. And we had a lot of fun because we were there as a group. But I think my camel riding days are
Now, this trip sort of wrapped up. I think you probably had a pretty amazing year last year. I mean, you went to D.C.
I did. Last February, I had the opportunity to go through the Pennsylvania Alliance for Geographic Education, which I've been on the steering committee for many years. And the coordinator and I went to Capitol Hill to lobby our congressmen and women for support of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which we all know is No Child Left Behind, to get their support for funding geography education, which is one of the 9 disciplines they list, but one that they don't fund. So we got an inside experience on Capitol Hill for a few days last winter. Of course, snowing in D.C. when we were there. And
Nice.
No
It just
cherry
adds to the
blossoms.
experience.
No cherry blossoms. No, we were watching all the school delays, which that was an interesting experience too, because here,
A flake of snow, and it's canceled.
It's all over.
Here you've got to be buried in, right? And there the weatherman's holding up his ruler, so proud there's measurable snow of a quarter of an inch.
Yeah, but you know what happened last year? For the first time, I think, ever, the guidelines of what constitutes a cancellation and delay was finally laid out.
That's
was it 20 below or 40 below? And that's where you draw the line.
Yeah, they
that's
got
when
the
Titusville
template.
will cancel school at 20 below zero.
They got the template from Alaska,
Right.
I think.
Well, and schools, I think, then started looking at that, and we canceled so much that we would just got used to it, and then,
It was an odd year.
then we stopped doing it.
Now, the other honor you had last year, and I think it hasn't been finalized yet, but you are a finalist as what's the official? It's like Teacher of the Year.
Pennsylvania Teacher of the Year. Yes.
Pennsylvania Teacher of the
Yes.
Year. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That
Yes.
had to have been very exciting for you to hear that.
It is. It was very exciting. I was nominated by Scott Davey, which I so appreciate the nomination, and that happened last October, and then the process took off from there. So it's been a lot of filling out applications and recording classroom segments and getting that all sent in. And at each step, they send back, congratulations, you've completed that step. Now here's the next thing to do.
Wow.
So the last piece, I hope, is due this October.
That's wonderful.
And so I'm just finishing that up, and they'll announce the winner in December in Harrisburg.
Well, congratulations. I think the closest thing I've ever come was a finalist in the Publishers Clearinghouse, which I got that in the mail last week. So
Well,
got my fingers crossed.
Sarah's nomination as a contender for this wonderful honor is a feather in the cap for all of us in the area.
Absolutely.
It really is.
And there's been a lot of things in the news with education recently, and of course this week, the retirement of Charlie Heller.
I was surprised to hear that. Yeah,
We all were.
Mm-hmm.
We all were.
Yeah, he'll serve out through the end of the year.
And he was here, and I'm trying to think what role. Was he assistant principal when you came?
He was the assistant principal at the junior high when I started here, and then as we moved to the middle school, he moved on to the high school and fulfilled the role of principal there for several years, and then moved on to Meadville into their superintendent's office.
Sarah Jones joining us this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Please come back. We'd love to have you. And what an experience.
It was a wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime experience. I don't think that most people put the Middle East on the top of their travel list right now, but
how timely. I mean, that's what
it was.
And to bring that experience to the students here, I think is just incredible.
Right. And students and adults as well have been so interested and genuinely interested in the trip and what's, what it was like and the pictures and the outfits, which I wore today.
Yeah, beautiful outfit.
Yeah. So we bought these for iftar dinner. It was Ramadan while I was there.
Uh-huh.
So it was a wonderful travel experience, so not soon to be forgotten.
I'm sure your life has changed. Do you have connections now? Do you email people or?
I do, yeah. We have some great connections that we made, not only with the people that went, so there were 12 other teachers there as well, but also some of the people that we met there. So we still get their perspective of what's happening as well.
Thank you so much. Please come back.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, it's 7:31. We've got the latest news with Andy Alm, and Kate Hoffner is going to deliver some additional headlines here this morning. So let's go to newslive365.com's Andy Alm this morning.
And thanks, Luke, and good morning. It's now 7:31 from the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network newsroom. I'm Andy Alm. After a 2-month-long investigation, the Oil City Police Department is reporting they've made an arrest in a child sex abuse case. Police said on Tuesday they arrested 51-year-old Philip R.